So Baruch Hashem, so welcome everybody, welcome our viewers throughout the world in Torah Anytime. Okay, so Zog the Heilige Mishnah, the Holy Mishnah says, Me'emasai kairin es hashemar ba'arvin. Me'emasai. So just got to start off with a word from Reb Zusha Anapoli, the famous Rebbe Reb Zusha. Me'emasai literally means from when? The Mishnah is asking, when do you start reciting Kriya Shema? We know it's a mitzvah to recite Kriya Shema every single day. We'll discuss later whether that mitzvah is a rabbinic mitzvah or biblical mitzvah. It's a midrash drabanan, but there's a mitzvah to say Kriya Shema. So the Mishnah is asking, Me'emasai, from when Kairin Shema do we read Shema ba'arvin in the evening? But you have to understand, the same way the Torah Shebachsav is multilateral, the Torah Shebal Peh is also multilateral. It has a lot of profundity, has a lot of depth. And we can never view anything, even in Torah Shebal Peh, as just superficial. So Me'emasai means like this, that when you approach Kriya Shema, where you being Mekabel Ol Malchus Shemayim, accepting the sovereign yoke of God upon yourself, and that's how the Rambam Maimonides explains precisely why the Talmud begins with Kriya Shema. Why? You can begin with any Masechta. Begin with Shabbos. Shabbos is an oath, it's a covenant. So important. Yoma, Yom Kippur. Why begin with Kriya Shema? So the Rambam explains, because Kriya Shema is Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shemayim. It's the tenet, the cardinal foundation of our faith. When we express our love for the Rebbeinu Shalom, that the V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha, you have to love God, and it has all the principles, the tenets of our faith, of our relation with Hashem. So that's why the Rambam says that Shas, Shisa Mishnah, the Talmud Bavli begins with Kriya Shema. So says Reb Zusha, Me'emasai is Me'emas Hashem. Is that when you approach Shema, it has to be mit the pachad, mit the tzitr. As much as you love the Rebbeinu Shalom, you understand the Rebbeinu Shalom loves you, but Shema is said, Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shemayim. I'm entering into something that is monumental. So I have to do it mit an ema. Me'emasai also means Me'emas Hashem, from dread, fear of Hashem. That's Me'emasai, Me'emas Hashem. A gewaltige word. I love the word. Oh, Me'emasai.
Who says this again? Sorry.
The Reb Zusha. Yeah.
Okay.
Now the emes is that it's brought down that it says Moshe emes is Sarasa emes, that Moshe is the true and his Torah is true. So encoded in the Torah is all emes. So the Mefarshim say that the first word that Rebbeinu Shalom said to the Jewish people was, what was the very first utterance, the first word that God said to the Jewish people in Mass at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai? What was the first word he said? Anochi. Anochi. So Anochi begins with an Aleph. Me'emasai, the first word of the Mishnah, begins with a Mem. And the first word of the Gemara, look in the Gemara, around 12 lines down, Tana, is a Taf. That's emes. Anochi me'emasai Tana is emes. Because Alts is emes. The whole entire Torah is, of course, is emes. Now, I want to share with you something that is brought down from the Megala Amukos says this, and it's also in the Seder Adoris also brings it down, but the Megala Amukos says that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who was the author of the Mishnah, he encoded his name into the Mishnayos. Because otherwise, it's not that he used a nom de plume and there was no ghostwriter. He was the author of the Mishnayos, but he never attributed, there was never ever a place where he says that I'm the author. But it's brought down, there's a Kabbalah that an author should encode his name into the writing. So they say Me'emasai is gematria of Mem Aleph Yud Mem Saf Yud, is gematria 501, which is a gematria of Ani Yehuda. I was Yehuda Nasi. The author of the Mishnah was Yehuda Nasi, Yehuda. Ani Yehuda Kadosh. I am Yehuda, who is called Rabbeinu HaKadosh, our holy Rebbe. That's what Rabbi Nasi was called. And so some ask that how could he refer to himself as Kadosh? It seems to be very conceited and not humility, but it could be that the word Kadosh also means Parish. Yehuda Hanasi was also separated. He was somebody that was Parish. And even what he famously said that his little pinky never derived pleasure, any more pleasure than he had to derive. He was not an ascetic as we think an ascetic would be, because he was obviously somebody that to be a Torah Jew, you can't really be an ascetic. It's almost impossible to be an ascetic. You have a mitzvah of Onik Shabbos. You have a mitzvah to be married. There are many mitzvahs. You can't be an ascetic. But this is what he means, Ani Yehuda Kadosh. And Ani Yehuda Kadosh is a precise gematria. 501 is gematria of Me'emasai. So therefore, he put his name into the Mishnah. Imagine that, Me'emasai, the first word. Actually, because the Sefer Rekeach, who was Rabbi Lozer from Germany, the great Rekeach, who was a great Rishon, from the Bali Toises. So his name, his first Sefer that he wrote was the Rekeach, and in it, Rekeach is gematria Lozer also. And there are many, many such svarim like that. But they say furthermore that Me'emasai, if you take Me'emasai, if it's gematria 5-1, plus the Mem, Aleph, Yud, Mem, Saf, Yud, the 6 letters, is actually gematria Hillel Shammai, and then that Ani Yehuda. And because Hillel and Shammai were the first to have the Mishnayos, there was around hundreds of Mishnayos, that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi went ahead and redacted those Mishnayos. 600, 400, there's many, many, many Mishnayos. In other words, the Sidorim and Shas, not only Mishnayos. I'm talking about, we know that there's Sisha Sidra Mishnah now, there's 6 orders of the Mishnah. But before that, there were many, many more. And Hillel and Shammai redacted it, and then who redacted it further? Rabbi Yehuda Nasi even redacted it further. So, therefore, Hillel and Shammai are also encoded in Me'emasai. So Me'emasai is Hillel, Shammai, and also Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. So everything is there. Just have to look at the gematria. Everything's encoded there. It's mamash amazing. And the Mishnah says, Me'emasai Karen as Shema Ba'arvin. When do we read? Karen means plural. When do we read? So you contrast this with another Mishnah, which has to do with Megillah Esther. Megillah, it says Megillah Nikreis. The Megillah is read, singular. One person reads a Megillah. So the Ritva has a diuk on this. Famous, and also it's brought down the Shnois Eliyahu from the Gra, from the Goin. The Goin says the Zelbazach, he says the same thing as Ritva. And the Ritva says the fact that it says Me'emasai Koren, the second word of the Mishnah is Koren. We read that Kriya Shema is different than other mitzvahs. Other mitzvahs, a person who's unfamiliar, who's unlettered, who's an ignoramus, so another person can be mitzvah. Another person can fulfill the obligation through saying it for him. Right? We have a concept of Shomea Koine, where you listen, it's as if you've recited it. You have this like vicarious, extemporaneous way of doing a mitzvah. You didn't say it yourself, but somebody said on your behalf, Shomea Koine. A person could be mitzvah someone else's chayv. So you hear this? Chayrin means that it's a yotzim in a klal, it's an exception to the rule. That every person, every yid has to read Shema on himself, on his own. Why should it be different? That's what it says, Kairin. Me'emasai Kairin. When do we read? Not Megillah Grace. Megillah Grace. A Megillah Esther. You go to shul on Purim. There's a Bal Kriya. Somebody's laning for everybody.
Oh, here it's a
He's being mitzvah. He's a chiyuv on yed yachid, on every kol yachid v'yachid. Every yachid, every individual has to say Krishma. So some want to say that the reason for that is that it's Kabbalah Sal Malchus Shemayim. The Shema. So what could be holier than Shema? And therefore you can't be mitzvah somebody in Kriya Shema. L'maisa we don't paskin like the Mishnah Berurah. Most poskim do not paskin like the Ritva, like the Gra, like the Goin. And they say that it's not true. Alright, what do they do with Kairin? Why does it say Megillah? Me'emasai Kairin? It shouldn't say Kairin. It should say singular, not plural. It's another shmooze. But we don't paskin like that. We paskin that you could be mitzvah somebody, just like anything else. You can fulfill somebody's obligation by saying on his behalf Kriya Shema as well. By the way, it's very interesting because the Chidah, Rabbi Chaim Yosef Dov Azulai, he brings down that the reason why the Mishnah, that the very first concept in Shas, the very first mitzvah in Shas, that we are mefalpel in and that we are metapel with is Kriya Shema. And he has a very interesting hesber. And it's not only the Chidah, many Achronim bring this down. And the fact is that they say the very first mitzvah that a Jew is ever obligated in. Think about it. A Jewish child who's 10, 11, 12 years old, he doesn't have a chiyuv, midaraisa of doing mitzvahs. It's all chinuch, it's all education. So that when he turns 13, all of a sudden, that's the moment he turns 13, you can't really calibrate it. Some say 13 means me'es la'es, it means that it has to be 24 hours. But we don't paskin like that. We paskin as soon as a child is 13 years old, you don't have to wait the me'es la'es, you don't have to wait the 24 hours. And even assuming he doesn't have necessarily, we don't know for sure if he has the physical signs of godless, of being an adult, he has mitzvahs. So what's the very first mitzvah that he's nichlalim, that devolves upon him? The very first mitzvah that a bar mitzvah boy gets in the evening, think about it. When does he become bar mitzvah? At nighttime. The very first mitzvah he has is Kriya Shema. Now it's interesting because I forgot, some of the Achronim bring up an interesting shiloh, and they say it's lav dafka, it's not necessarily the case. Because as soon as a boy turns 13, he could decide on his own to give tzedakah to an ani. Or he could decide to do Bikur Cholim. Or he could go ahead and decide to do any other type of mitzvah. So it's lav davka, the Kriya Shema. I think it's a doichik to say that. Because there's no chiyuv. Okay, for let's say an ani comes to him, it's Ef Shalasam say maybe, just when it's Seitzah Kachavim, an ani has been plotting this to exact some kind of vengeance upon this kid, because the kid was always a dentist and menace, and the kid was always breaking the kids, the neighbor's windows with his baseball bat and baseball ball, and the guy says, you know what, I'm going to get him. As soon as he turns 13, just when the stars come out, I'm going to be able to calibrate the exact and synchronize the exact moment, and I'm going to go to him and say, Yingala, I need some help, little boy. He's not a little boy anymore. Not a little boy anymore. I'll never forget, at my bar mitzvah, a big chacham spoke, a big rabbi, and he said to me, he says, you should know, yesterday I saw you were a boy, and today you're a man. Really? I never forgot that speech. It was the shortest, the most profound speech I probably heard. Short and sweet, big. And he says, yesterday, really? Yeah, today I'm a man. So he says to the boy, he says, I need you to do something on my behalf. I need you to give me tzedakah or something, right? Okay, then l'chara, it could be then there's a chiyuv, because you're not allowed to turn a blind eye. If somebody asks you, and assuming it's a legitimate, a genuine cause, a person really is needy and deserves a tzedakah maybe. All right, but that's if you want to think about a universal mitzvah that applies and devolves upon every single child the moment he turns bar mitzvah, is Kriya Shema. And that's why the Mishnah, that's where Rabbi Danasi begins Masechta Brachas, but particularly Masechta Brachas, but also Gan Shas, the entire Talmud, with the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. It's the very first mitzvah that hits. It's the very first mitzvah that takes effect. Most of the time, yeah.
Why would the mitzvah
exactly,
be
yeah.
Torah? Why wouldn't the first mitzvah be Birkas Torah before you
Very good shot. So it's interesting enough, I think I wrote down that there's the Tiferes Yisrael, the great Tiferes Yisrael, Rav Lipschitz, that's all. It's in his Hakdama. He has a fascinating Hayara, fascinating insight. He says, 1 second. Is the first mitzvah Kriya Shema? What's the most important mitzvah that's incumbent upon every single Jew? Talmud Torah. Learning Torah. Learning Torah is the most important. He says, why? Because Talmud may be l'dei Maisa. Learning Torah brings you to practice. The fact is, every Jew is supposed to be a Torah-observant Jew, Torah-ingrained Jew, and is supposed to fulfill the mitzvahs. But how do I know how to fulfill the mitzvahs if I don't learn Torah? So the foundation of our practice as Jews is learning Torah. And where does it say the mitzvah to learn Torah? It says it in Kriya Shema, V'shinanta levanecha. V'shinanta levanecha. V'shinanta. You should learn. V'shinanta v'dibarta bam. So it says the Tiferes Yisrael that really, in essence, the very first mitzvah that a person has is what? Is Talmud Torah. However, he has a Moridik Chiddush, a fascinating Chiddush. You know what he says? He says, we paskin that you could actually fulfill your obligation of Talmud Torah through saying Kriya Shema. So if that's the case, that's why the Mishnah begins with Kriya Shema. Because really it's killing two birds with one stone. You gain the mitzvah Kriya Shema, but you also gain the mitzvah Talmud Torah, which really is your first obligation as a Jew. Mitzvah Talmud Torah. So Now, the Mishnah says that when is the obligation to learn Kriya Shema, to say Kriya Shema? Is when the Kohanim that were tummy, that were ritually impure, that were ritually contaminated, when they start eating truma again. When is that? When are they allowed to eat truma? When they're ritually impure, when they're ritually contaminated, they're not allowed to eat truma. So they have to go to mikvah, and as soon as the evening commences, then they're allowed to eat truma. They don't have to wait till the next day that they brought their sacrifices, which were the atonement sacrifice. Ad sof hashmara rishona, until a certain period called hashmara rishona, which is approximately 1/3 of the night. That's when they're allowed to say Kriya Shema until. So they're allowed to say Kriya Shema from the time that the stars come out, because that coincides with the time of the Kohanim being able to eat truma. It's the same time. Gemara says on the base, it's a zelbazach, it's a shaveh, that they're equal, it's the same thing, until the hashmara rishona, divrei Rabbi Eliezer. And then the Gemara brings down two more opinions. The Chachamim omer until chatzos, you can only say Kriya Shema until midnight. Rabbi Gamliel holds you have all night until, he says, Hamud HaShachar, until the morning star. I want to share with you a fascinating hayara, mamash chiddush, and that is that the Meforshim say that the very first Tana that's ever mentioned in Shas is who? Is Rabbi Eliezer. The very first Tana ever mentioned in Shas. Why does he Zeicha?
Isn't he also the last time?
Why is he Zeicha? Psh, how do you know that?
I heard this past
okay.
this past week. It was mentioned in the.
You mentioned Shir, yes, Emes. The first time and last time, Uksin. The very end of Uksin is also Rabbi Eliezer. Emes, it's true. Rabbi Eliezer is the first time and the last to ever to be mentioned in Shas. So what's Takab Shat? Why? So it could be based on the Gemara in Sukkot, Chav Chesem Beis. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Miyamai, it's my entire life, like Kadmu Adam beBeis Meresh, that no one preceded me into the Beis Meresh. I was always the first into Beis Meresh." So Ken Zayin, it's mistaber to say, it's possible to say, and that's why the Rebbe Shalom wanted him to be awarded, that since he was always the first in Beis Meresh, he should be the first into the Gemara.
Was he the last one to leave off?
The last one to leave, exactly. That's what it says. The Gemara says he was the last one to leave. So therefore, he's the last one in Masechah, in the Gan Shas, in all of Shas, and Uksin, he's the last one to leave. Rabbi Eliezer. It could also be that Rabbi Eliezer, Stam Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus. Rabbi Eliezer was a Baal Tshuva. Rabbi Eliezer's father refused to allow him to learn. His father didn't think that he had the ability to learn, whether he thought he was cognitively impaired or developmentally disabled. I don't know what his father thought. He had some kind of learning disability, handicap. His father refused to let him go learn. And he wanted to go learn desperately. He ran away. And his father was going to mamish disinherit him. He was going to lose his entire Yerusha. His father was a very affluent man. A fabulously wealthy person. And Eliezer gave up everything in order to go learn by Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai. And who was his Talmud? Rabbi Kiva. Who was his Talmud? Onkelos. So it could be that the Rebbe Shalom rewards those who persevere and those that act l'man Hashem despite the odds and despite the obstacles and the hardships. Rabbi Eliezer had a hover, he had a steig, he had to really be diligent and assiduous and really perspire and really work hard. He learned, probably Aleph Beis at an advanced stage, and he starved himself. Mamash, the Gemara brings down a story about him where he had nothing. So it could be that's why he was rewarded, that it's called that he was the first Tana, Rabbi Eliezer mentioned in Shas. Now if you go further, I just want to point out a big machloikus about Kriya Shema. Is the chiyuv of Kriya Shema, the obligation of Kriya Shema, is a midaraisa or the rabbanon? So I'll tell you, it has a halachic ramification. Sometimes I remember one time a lady called me. She told me that her husband, he sleeps. I hope that she's not listening ever, and he's not listening. I don't want to bring back bad memories for anybody. But she called me. She told me her husband always misses. He sleeps past Mount Kriya Shema many Shabbos mornings, and he sleeps late. And she wanted to know, what's her job? Is her job to wake him up? I also get this call sometimes. I'm mole, that's not very frequent, but I got plenty of calls like this from parents that their teenage kids, teenage sons, they miss Kriya Shema. And should they wake them up? What should they do? So I always tell people that you have to be mashar, you have to weigh out whether it's your job to be the religious cop, the religious policeman in your house or not. Sometimes it can be very dangerous, especially spousal, especially if it's a spouse. And it works both ways. For the male not to be too domineering over the female, and the female not to be show too much clout over the husband in this regard. And when it comes to matters of religiosity, of frumkeit, it depends. But it's a very, very important shiloh. And we'll see that it has a bearing on whether or not Kriya Shema is D'oraisa D'Rabbanan. Another shiloh is that this is halach l'maisa. If somebody doesn't know, if he doesn't remember, if he said Kriya Shema, it's not that he has to have amnesia or like dementia. It happens that you wake up early in the morning, you forget, did I say Kriya Shema? Did I not say Kriya Shema? Or it could be at night. You take a dribble. You fall asleep. You doze off. We'll see that the Gemara speaks about David HaMelech. That David HaMelech, famous Gemara in Brachos, the Daf, that he didn't sleep, or some say he slept until midnight, like a sus, like a horse. Others say he didn't sleep at all. But a person falls asleep, they don't know if they say Kriya Shema. So they're mesupik, they're suffik, they're in doubt if they say Kriya Shema. So if it's a d'oraisa, we say suffik d'oraisa l'chumra. That if you have a suffik about a d'oraisa, you have to be stringent. You have to say it, even though you may be saying it again. But if it's a rabbanon, it's suffik d'rabbanan l'kul. If you have a doubt about a rabbinic law, then we're lenient. So what do you do over here? So the Emma says it's a big machlokes in Armoim. Later on in the Gemara in Brachos Daf Chaf Aleph about Kriya Shema, whether it's a d'oraisa d'rabbanan. And Shmuel says that Kriya Shema is only d'rabbanan. You'll tell me, how could Shmuel say such a thing? The Torah says, you have to love Hashem with everything you have. Right, then what does it say? Help me out. Huh?
What are you talking about?
Right? It says when you go to sleep, when you awaken, when you wake up in the morning, right? So isn't there a chiyuv of Kriya Shema? Pashtus, simply speaking. There's a chiyuv of Kriya Shema. When you go to sleep, when you get up. So how can Shmuel say this? No, it says it in the Shema. He says, no, that's referring to Talmud Torah, to learning. It's not referring to Kriya Shema. That's Shmuel's shita. So, like Shmuel, if you pass like Shmuel, then if you're in doubt, if you don't know if you say Kriya Shema or not, you wouldn't repeat it. You wouldn't say it. Because it's not referring to it. The Rabbanon came along. They broadened the horizons. And they said that the Shnanta V'necha Dibarta Bam B'shivtecha V'esecha V'lecha Derech is not limited to Divrei Torah, to Talmud Torah, but also encompasses Kriya Shema. But it's rabbinic. As of course, it's holy as the Rabbanon, but it's not d'oraisa. However, Rabbi Lazar says that no, Kriya Shema is a chiyuv d'oraisa. When it says b'shafchav gemecha, it's referring to Kriya Shema, and therefore a suffix d'oraisa l'chumra. And l'maisa, there's a big machlokes on poskim. Most poskim paskin like Rabbi Lazar, not like Shmuel. However, Taisus and Menachos holds like Shmuel, that Chiv is only Rabbanon. And one of the Ga'idim also holds the same sheet as Taisus, like Shmuel, that Kriya Shema is only Rabbanon. And there's a third shita, I forgot who, that also holds that Kriya Shema is Rabbanon. Most Rishonim hold, like Rabbi Lazar, that Kriya Shema is d'oraisa. Okay, so what does that mean? It means halach l'maisos. If you're not sure if you said Kriya Shema, you have to say it again. Whether you don't know if you said it, you have to say it. Okay, but now let's go back to the situation of if you have a chiyuv of waking up somebody that fell asleep. So if it's a roommate who's not going to hate you for the rest of your life, I'm saying, a chavrusa that falls asleep, and it's a person that is a shomer Torah mitzvahs, that cares about Torah mitzvahs, then, you have to be choishish for the Roiv Rishon that hold that Kriya Shema is a Raisa, that Kriya Shema is a biblical mitzvah, and therefore, if they don't say it, they could be missing a Chiyuv D'Oraisa. However, it's a Shalom Bayis situation, where the woman will wake up her husband. Depends. If he's a starker ben Torah, if he's a strong ben Torah, then he'll appreciate it immensely, and he'll buy her, a bouquet of roses. But if he's, a shtickle of a, chatzi, you know what I'm saying, and he's got some issues there, then he may be very resentful. Instead of getting her a bouquet of roses, he may do something else. So therefore, you have to be mashar now. Just say 1 second. First of all, if somebody's sleeping, there's a sheet that holds, and once a person is sleeping, they have the din of oines. They have a din of someone who's almost totally absolved, because when you're sleeping, you don't have your faculties, you don't have your cognizance. And therefore, since you don't have your faculties of cognizance, you're basically in a different world, so you're potter. We don't necessarily pass like this in all cases. Yeah.
Aren't you responsible to set an alarm?
MS. You should. But once you're asleep, you're now in the realm of, it's almost like you're transplanted to a different sphere. And it's almost like you have no wherewithal to do it. Now, is this a lechatchila? A person should plan such a thing? No. A person shouldn't do this. But there's a famous shita of Rav Shlomo Zalman. Rav Shlomo Zalman has a tzad to say that when a person is sleeping, they're oynes. And so it has implications for sukkahs also. That if a person falls asleep outside the sukkah, are you mechuyev to carry him inside the sukkah? If he's sleeping, it's almost like he's not here. He's in a different island. He's in a different belt. He's not here. So that's one facet. And the other facet is there are Rishonim that hold from the Goyim, Taisvis, and very, very reputable Shitas that hold. That's only the Rabbanan Kriya Shema, as strange as it may seem. So putting these all into account, it may not be the best idea for Mrs. Cohen to wake up Mr. Cohen. And if you have a teenager who's on the brink, who's vacillating, who's a little schwach in his Yiddishkeit, in his observance, and you're going to wake him up, he may say, you're not my mashgiach, you're not my Rosh Yeshiva, So you have to be careful. It's eskashal. It's interesting to her. It's to eskashal. Now, which parshias of Kriya Shema? Again, most Rishonim hold that it's biblical, but you have to say Kriya Shema every day. The Torah mandates, Torah requires, obligates you to say Kriya Shema every day. Which part of Kriya Shema is D'Oraisa? Huh? No, that's a huge tumult. Huge tumult. Okay. Many Rishonim hold that this man is only the Rabbanan. There's a famous shtickle like on many Achronim have. Oh, it's a shir on it's to an independent shir. But which part of Kriya Shema is D'Oraisa? So the Rashba holds, it's not only the Rashba, the Ramban, Nachmanides, Ramban and the Rashba both hold that only the first pasuk, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, that's D'Oraisa. So that means that if a person is afraid they'll miss Man Kriya Shema, then he should go ahead and say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And at least, according to the Rashba Ramban, he's right to the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. Right, so when you have Zman Kriya Shema, it's like 9:30, and you woke up late, and you're rushing to shul, and you don't know, you want to at least say, stop in the street, and say, Shema Yisrael Hashem. And according to Rashba Ramban, you're right to the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. Now, the Rif and the Talmidei Rabbi Yoina actually cite the Rif. They hold that the entire first parsha, from V'ahavta until the very end of the first parsha, that parsha is D'Oraisa. Not only the first pasuk of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. By the way, it's very important to mention, I'll never forget, I was a Rebbe in Eretz Yisrael, and I had a Talmud that told me that he stopped putting on tefillin. Rachman al-Islam. I said, why? He said, because I'm not into the rabbinic innovations. It's an invention of the rabbis. said, excuse me? I said, come here. I opened up Parshas V'Eschanan for him and Sefer Devarim, and I showed him Parsha Kriya Shema. I said, "Kshartem lo'isal yedecha v'yitufos benenecha." You should bind tefillin upon you. He says, you know, I went through the entire yeshiva system. Nobody ever told me. Nobody ever showed me the part. Imagine the kid saying Shema his whole life. Never knew that. There's mitzvah tefillin and Kriya Shema. Chaval, mamash. It's terrible. I wouldn't guesstimate now a statistic of how many kids have that same unfortunate perspective. Aber, you think about it. The first Parsha Kriya Shema is Daraisa, according to the Rif and according to Talmidei Rabbi Yehuda. And you look at it, it's in, find it. Go look at Parsha V'Eschanan. It's in Parsha V'Eschanan. Parsha Kriya Shema, the first Parsha. So that's their shita. So that means that in order to fulfill my mitzvah deraisa of Kriya Shema, at least I have to say the first pasuk, and according to the Rif and the Rabbi Yehuda, to me the Rabbi Yehuda, I have to also say the first parsha. Bri Chadash holds that V'hayam Shemaya, the second parsha of Kriya Shema, is also mitzvah deraisa. And the shita Toisus Rabbeinu Tam is that all the parshas of deraisa. Most don't hold like that, but they're all deraisa. So it's kedai to make sure that when you say it, Shema v'chayim Shema in the third parsha, to have in mind that you're mekayim mitzvah deraisa, that you're fulfilling the mitzvah deraisa, biblical mitzvah of Kriya Shema. But if you're in a extenuating circumstance, and you're in a whatever situation you're in, then at least the minimum, get the Ramban and the Rashba to say Shema Yisrael Shalom Kino Shem Echad to be Yitzchak Deraisa. Now it's getting late, so I just want to share with you a shtickle Agadata. It's beautiful. The whole you learn the daf, you see so many beautiful stories and precious jewels and gems to guide your life. Today's daf is all about fighting the Yetzer Hara. And it's just, I'm telling you, it's priceless, you know, to learn it. And it's about the value of Saint Kriya Shema, how it affords protection, physical, spiritual protection, to when you go to sleep at night, to say, even if you daven Marav, by the way, even if you daven Marav, so many of us daven Marav, we daven Marav a little earlier, we daven Marav before the stars come out, we daven Marav after sunset. That means you have to repeat Kriya Shema before you go to sleep. And you shouldn't just repeat Kriya Shema before you go to sleep. You should have in zin, you should have in mind that you're being yotzei, not only Kriya Shema Lamita for protection, because everybody wants, you know, the spiritual protection, but you should have in mind that you're actually fulfilling the mitzvah of Kriya Shema that you didn't necessarily get according to all opinions when you said it after sunset. If you daven at a 9 o'clock Marav, then you're okay. Then you should still say something for Kriya Shema. The Gemara says that even at the greatest tzaddik, he should say, B'yadcha avkid ruchi, that and Hashem, B'yadcha in your hand, avkid ruchi, I entrust my spirit. Something to show the Rebbe Shalom that when you go to sleep, you understand that sleep is a bit of a demise. And that there's a paralysis, where some of your body shuts down, and therefore you're entrusting Hashem with your spirit. And that you understand that you need the Rebbe Shalom to fortify you. You need the Rebbe Shalom to inoculate you, so to speak, to protect you. But let's go to the Gemara in Daf Daled Amud Beis. That's on page 8 in the Gemara. And where it speaks about... Now, this is a little difficult for me to guide you. It's if you go to the end, the last line, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's 12 lines from the bottom on the Daled Amud Beis. No, Daled Amud Beis. Amar Rabbi Elazar.
Okay.
Amar Rabbi Avina. This is not Rabbi Eliezer, it's Rabbi Elazar. It's Andrish. It's a different... Amar Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Avina. Kol Omer. Whoever says, does everybody have it? Yeah. See with the two dots around 12 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's 12 lines at the bottom. The two dots, Amar Rabbi Elazar. There's an asterisk there before Amar Rabbi Avina. There's a little hay there. Kol Omer Tehillah LeDavid B'chol Yom. Whoever says the kapitel, chapter in Tehillim in Psalms 145, which is called Tehillah LeDavid B'chol Yom, every single day, Shalosh Pamim, 3 times, Muftach Lo Yishu Ben Olam Haba. It's guaranteed that he will get a portion of the world to come. My time, why? What's so special? What's so auspicious about this 145, Psalm 145? So the Gemara says like this. It's because there's an acrostic in Tehillah David 145 that has the entire Aleph base in there. Nema Ashrei Tamim Derech Ta'asya B'Tamnaya. So then Ashrei Tamim Derech is even better. That capital is even better because you have 8 times Aleph base. Tamnani Apin says, Ella Mishum Disbei Pesach Sedecha. The reason why Tehillah David, that's the Ashrei that we say every day, 3 times a day. We say it twice in Shachris and once by Mincha. The reason why it's so powerful is because it has the pasuk in there, which is a credo, which is a mantra of our faith, and that is Posech. The Gemara continues exciting the pasuk, Posech Esidecha Umaspia L'chol Chayrotzai. Doesn't finish the pasuk; it just says Posech Esidecha. But Posech, we say to Rabbi Shalom, Posech Esidecha, open your hands, Umaspia, and satiate L'chol Chayrotzai, every living being. So this is so powerful that the Mishnah Berurah Paskins, by the way, it's in I think it's in Nun Zayin, Siman Nun Zayin, that if you don't say Posech Es Yadecha, when we say Asher, we all say it. Posech Es Yadecha. Please Hashem, open your hands. Obviously the Baruch Shalom doesn't have hands, it's anthropomorphical speaking. Posech Es Yadecha must be unsatiated. Give us our parnasa. The Baruch Shalom was falazach. We're saying on you from parnasa. We need you. You're the one that is maspia. You satiate everybody. So if you don't say it with kavanah, you were in Yotzei. You have to say Ashrei again. So some poskim hold that if I was in Psukei de Zimra, right, with all the halukas and Ashrei, I didn't say Posech Sedech with Kavanah, then I don't have to say it again, maybe because I could have it in mind by the next Ashrei, by Ashrei Voltzion. Others say no, you have to say it again. Totally, you have to say it again. Imagine Posech Sedech is so important that I'm not Yotzei if I don't say it with Kavanah. I have to have Kavanah. That's why if you look at the Sfardim, when they say it, they go like this. Potech et yadecha umasbi'ah. Right? They go like this. I do the same thing because it helps me remember that I have to say it with a fervor. I have to say it with kavanah, with focus, concentration. It's very, very important. It's very, very interesting because if you look in Kapitel Kuf Memhei, which is our Ashrei, you'll notice that it never says Ashrei. It begins, Tehillah LeDavid, a praise to David, King David. Tehillah David, Aramimcha, I will exalt you. B'choyom, right? B'choyom abrachecha, every day I will praise you. And Gadol Hashem, Muhulam, great is God, exalted is God. Muhulam Yod, and very, very laudable is God. It never says Ashrei. We incorporate Ashrei into that song. Why? So the Mata Moshe explains, and the Oitzer Tfilos explains, that the reason for that is that we want a person to be composed and collected and have equanimity when he davens. And therefore we put the verse, Asher Yoshev Yisecha, praises the person, Yoshev, who's sitting, notice that the person has a focus, that the person is concentrating. And then, since the next pasuk it says, Asher Yoshev Yisecha, Odio Luchasela, Asher Am Shekachalo, Asher Am Shekachalo, Asher Am, praise is the nation, Shekachalo, that waits for God, that pines and yearns for God. Asher Am Shekachalo, Asher Am Shashem Elokav, praise is the nation that has God as their king. So therefore, since that word, Ashrei, follows in the immediate next pasuk, you have then, Ashrei Yoshev Yisecha, Odio Luchasela, Asher Am Shekachalo, Asher Am Shashem Elokav. Therefore, you have Ashrei 3 times. And since you have Ashrei 3 times, it's considered to be very praiseworthy to have Ashrei 3 times, because the same way we say Ashrei 3 times a day, you get Olam Haba, therefore we have Ashrei 3 times in the Tehillah David that we're saying. But Be'emes, it doesn't really begin with Ashrei. It's borrowed from the verse before, from Kuf Mem Daled, from 144, which most people are not familiar with. Most people are not aware of that. Okay. Okay, so unfortunately, I don't want to. I know everybody has to be at work tomorrow, and you know everybody's tired. So not everybody has to work. Okay, so I don't want to. I don't want to go on too long, but I just want to give you chizuk to please try your best to spend time learning the Gemara. The Gemara's mamish tamur u kitov Hashem. Taste and see how delicious, how beautiful the Torah is, and how much is really there's so much we could have covered, but unfortunately we only had limited time. But really, this tremendous repository of wisdom, of knowledge, and of emunah, of faith, in these dafim, in these pages of Gemara. So a big ashikach everybody for coming, and Bez Hashem will continue Bez Hashem next week. Yeah.
Serious, did you mention that observation? When you look at the word Me'emasai, it's really my Masai.